Hi, and welcome to C. Myers Live. I'm Sally Myers. I'm a principal at C. Myers Corporation.
And I'm Charlene Leland. I'm a vice president at C. Myers.
And today we want to focus our discussion on revenue and growing revenue, growing that top line. And as leadership teams continue their strategic discussions, go into their formal strategic planning process, we really encourage the discussion with respect to sources of revenue, diversity of revenue, to take up a good portion of the discussion.
There's so many things that teams want to do, and there are lots of strategic discussions around things that don't have to do with revenue that are important. So, it's how do you control operating expense growth, and how do you, um, make things more efficient, which are all good things to do. But our point is to make sure that there's a balance in those conversations and that enough discussion happens around true revenue growth.
Depository institutions, many of them have gone after the customer experience and efficiencies, and they've been relentless in making that experience better. And we think that type of focus on the experience and the efficiencies needs to also be put on generating revenue, stepping back, looking at sources of revenue, understanding there are signals about threats, understanding that trying to do the best they can to understand when those threats might materialize. Some are happening today, little by little by little. Sources of revenue are declining. There's talk about the overdraft protection again, and of course the mortgage volume has been top of mind. And so giving equal weight, if not more weight, to growing that top line as you have your strategic discussions. And there are ways you can go about doing that.
Sally, I just want to acknowledge that with the focus that organizations have put on the customer experience and the efficiencies, we do see in many of those organizations that their operating expenses are not growing as fast, which tells us that that type of focus works. And
Mm-hmm.
so your point is really well taken, that you're saying, let's make sure that some of the focus is, and a good portion of the focus is on that revenue growth, so that we can have just as much success in those areas.
Yes, yes. And some of the things to consider is stepping back and along the lines that you just said, we invested a lot in the customer experience, gaining the efficiencies, the speed. So step back and say, okay, we made infrastructure investments. What could we do with the current infrastructure to spruce up our product offering, even roll out different product offerings, package it differently, message it differently, and having those discussions for what we already have, what can we do to generate more revenue? And it may not even be a change in the product. It might be a change in the packaging, a change in the mix.
Right. Think of, take an example from the fintech world, which is Chime, which has been around for a while. It's not really a new example, but what are they doing that a traditional financial institution can't do or doesn't do? And the answer is it was mostly about messaging, packaging, and how they come across, focused on a particular target market, and hey, you can get your paycheck a couple of days early. It's not something that's new that only Chime can do, right? So that's
Right.
that. So take a page out of the fintech books. That's one thing where the fintechs have been quite successful, is in their messaging and somehow resonating with a broader audience, or at least particular audiences, and getting them to come and do business with them, even in new ways that people aren't used to. So it's possible through that messaging and maybe just a slight difference in how the products are packaged, to make that happen. So why not study where they're being successful and think about, gosh, do we have the infrastructure that would support something really similar?
Well, yeah, study it, but also then start asking yourselves different questions because it seems so simple. Like, what's going to really resonate with this target market? I think it'd be cool to have access to my funds 2 days early. So truly putting yourself in the mindset of the consumer, and if you can't do that, finding people who can help you put your mindset, walk in the consumer's shoes, for lack of a better term, and those are different shoes depending on who your target market is. The other one that's in the in the financial services industry, of course, is buy now, pay later. But if you take it out of the financial services industry and you talk about what does the consumer want, and repackaging. Now, I like to go down the food route. I like food. And so I think of potato chips, Lay's potato chips. What do they offer?
Can't eat just one.
Well, you can't eat just one. And so therefore, it's great that they now have little packages for portion control for the people that can't eat just one. But what else do they have? They have the gigantic family pack, party pack, more affordable if you want to open one huge bag all at once. So it's the same potato chip, but they got in the head of the consumer and repackaged and remessaged depending on what was important to that consumer. Same with Coke, or any of the soft drink products, right? Really big containers to very small portion control. So looking outside the industry for ideas like that, the traditional depository institutions, many of them have that great infrastructure. So start reimagining how you could use that current infrastructure and then scale it in different ways.
Yeah, and on working within that infrastructure, there are probably things that you can do today to make changes that you feel like are going to drive the revenue. But then take it another step further. And what if you step outside of whatever you have today, whatever your infrastructure is today, and think about it through another lens? And that is, if I could do anything for my customers, what would I do? How would I set this up to appeal to them? And then when you think about that without the restrictions of what you can do today, then it might start a plan for where you want to be, 3 or 4 years down the road. It could come into play when you make, decisions about what third parties or partners you're going to use to do different things. But there might also be some of those things that when you think about that you could even start to implement today. So there could be a blend of here's some things we can do now, and as we work toward this ultimate. So I think that, that the whole thinking process that's how you're going to figure out where you want to go.
Yeah, coming in through different windows.
Yeah.
I don't want to wait forever. We just spent a lot of time, energy, and money on upgrading our infrastructure. What can we do short term? We know the world's going to change, and it's going to change fast. We better start thinking longer term about what could be without being handcuffed. And then the blend.
Yeah.
So can't wait forever, but what could we start doing today to get us prepared for that longer term horizon? Yeah, a great point. And then the other thing too is, as you're having your strategic discussions and you're doing your initiatives and you're going through the prioritization process, because it's like kids in the candy store, so many exciting opportunities. Another really good thing to do is to take those initiatives and have very direct conversations. Which of these initiatives are designed to grow the top line? They're designed for it. Which of these initiatives are table stakes? We just have to do it. Which ones are an experience play? Which ones are an efficiency play? And then if you go through and the majority of them are table stakes, efficiency play, experience play, then it can be a great way to step back and say, okay, what's our direct initiatives that are directly designed to grow the top line? And when you're going through these discussions, it's really important to not rationalize or justify.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking that as you were saying that, because there's almost any initiative is hoped at some point to improve revenue or at least improve profitability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, almost all of them you could somehow tie to whatever you want to. So I think that the really key thing here is having really good back and forth in the discussions, challenging each other, like you said, on, okay, yeah, maybe that might improve revenue later if it delights a bunch of our customers and they decide to come back and do more business with us. Not that we shouldn't do that, but is it really for driving revenue? Is this mainly the thing that we're trying to do? Well, maybe not. Or you could even rank them. So whether something is designed to generate revenue or designed to do something else, it's not really cut and dried, right? So you can rank based on which ones are most designed to drive revenue and which ones are less designed for that, and maybe more positioned for the future to reduce expenses, something along those lines.
Yes. So if they're not directly designed for that, then going through that process, and then I'll add one more thing, is if you're going to do that, then make sure you put the timing on it.
Yeah, because it's going to drive revenue in 3 years is different than it's going to drive revenue next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then if you're seeing a lot of long-term plays, then it becomes extremely important to step back and say, what are we going to do in the interim? And maybe you come back and you say, nothing. We don't have to do anything. We're okay. But saying that out loud to each other and having those clarity discussions so that expectations are appropriately managed.
Yeah, and by the end of those discussions, you should be able to look at your strategic initiatives and as a whole, take a look at them and then say, this is balanced the way we need it to be, or maybe we need to prioritize things a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I want to say one more thing and then we'll wrap it up, is I want to go to the table stakes. Because we did talk about, well, table stakes, experience, efficiency, design for revenue growth. If you further dissect that, and you're showing up with a lot of things of, we have to do it. We just have to do it. It's table stakes. That's another flag to really step back. And how are you playing catch up, or are you really having strategic progress? Now, playing catch up can be great I say it can be great, but it may be necessary. But then ask yourself how long you want to be in that position. And if there's a lot of things that are table stakes and you have to do it to catch up, then another question to step back and say, to ask yourself is, do I really need to catch up, or can I skip it? Can I just jump over it? Can I leapfrog it so I can get ahead?
Mm-hmm.
And just more food for thought.
Mm-hmm. And one little point on that. It's actually a big point, but I'll mention it very quickly. And that is that if you're asking yourself, are there things you cannot do? Can you skip over it? Can you leapfrog it? The other thing is it important to your target market? Because there might be things you can skip just because the rest of the industry does it. It might not be important to your target market. So that's another thing to keep in mind as you make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we appreciate your time today. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us.